2021 study published in the journal Appetite found something unsettling. Adults who were extremely picky eaters scored significantly higher on measures of anxiety and obsessive-compulsive traits than people with a broad, flexible palate. Not pickier about food, pickier about life. So if you know someone who won't touch a sauce that's touched other food, who needs every meal exactly the same, who treats a new restaurant like a threat, you might be looking at something far deeper than taste buds. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what's happening inside their brain, and it might explain more about them than you ever expected. Because here's the thing psychologists have been quietly mapping for years. Picky eating in adulthood isn't a preference, it's a pattern. And patterns always point to something underneath. Let's start with psychologist Paul Rozin, one of the founding minds behind the psychology of disgust. Rozin proposed that disgust isn't just about avoiding bad food. It's a protective system, wired to keep us safe from contamination. In most people, this system calms down as they grow up and get exposed to more foods, more cultures, and more experiences. But in some adults, that disgust circuitry stays hyperactive. It doesn't just reject spoiled milk, it starts rejecting the unfamiliar in general. Now, layer on the Big Five personality model. Research consistently links extreme picky eating to low scores in a trait called openness to experience. That's the willingness to try new things, sit with ambiguity, and tolerate the unknown. And low openness doesn't stay in the kitchen. It shows up as resistance to new ideas, new places, new relationships, even new versions of yourself. And then there's control. Clinical psychologists studying anxiety disorders have long observed that when people feel like their world is unpredictable, they instinctively shrink their world down to something they can predict. Food is one of the easiest things to control. You decide exactly what goes in your body, when, and how. So extreme pickiness can actually be an anxiety management strategy, wearing a very ordinary disguise. Think of it like a person who only ever walks the same 3 streets in their entire city. Technically, they're never lost. They never get surprised. But they also never discover the shortcut, the hidden cafe, or the version of the city that only reveals itself to people willing to wander. Picky eating works the same way. It's not really about flavor. It's about staying inside streets the brain has already approved as safe. Here's where it gets interesting. Researchers studying adult food neophobia, the fear of new foods, found it correlates with lower relationship satisfaction and reduced social flexibility. Why? Because so much of human bonding happens over food. Trying your partner's cultural dish, saying yes to the weird street food on vacation, sharing a plate with strangers at a wedding. When someone's disgust system is on high alert, they're not just avoiding food, they're quietly avoiding connection opportunities without even realizing it. But here's what almost nobody talks about, and it's the part that changes how you should actually respond to a picky eater in your life. Extreme pickiness usually isn't stubbornness. It's a nervous system that never learned the new food equals safe pathway. Often because early exposure was limited, controlled, or shaped by anxiety in the household itself. Which means the picky eater in your life isn't being difficult on purpose. They're running an old protective program that food just happens to be the visible symptom of. And that changes everything about how you approach it. Pressuring someone to just try it doesn't rewire disgust. It reinforces the threat response. What actually works, according to exposure-based psychology, is low-stakes, repeated exposure. Tiny, non-threatening contact with the unfamiliar, again and again, until the brain reclassifies it as safe. So the next time you see someone scan a menu like it's a minefield, you're not watching a food quirk. You're watching a nervous system in real time deciding what counts as safe enough to let in.